Our next speaker is a passionate data analyst and expert. He's built projects and teams in data in industries such as e-commerce, banking, or telco. But to further endorse his passion, he co-founded the company Data Booster. And he will try to tell us today, to give us some of his magic regarding on how to get the data literacy and effective storytelling. Remus Racolta, Data Booster. Remus, you have the stage.
Thank you so much. Try to see if okay, it works. Okay, thanks all for being here. My name is Remus. I'm co-founder of Data Booster, a company that a startup, a Romanian Dutch startup that specializes in customized data fluency programs for companies. And today, we're going to talk about effective data storytelling and then how to turn your insights into action. And then what better way to start the presentation than with a story? Early in my career, I started out as a data scientist working for a large financial company, working on discounting profit cash flows in the industry, in the insurance industry. And then I was part of a larger department. We were working on modeling insurance products. We have a manager with 25 years of experience, so that kind of manager that you would think twice or three times before sharing an insights. So I was working at my analysis, and then at some point I found a very interesting insights. I found out that the pricing team was using some wrong assumptions for calibrating the pricing of the insurance products. This had a 3% impact on profit. But then was a question, how to share these insights with the wider team and then how to share it with my manager. 2 weeks later, after debating and after being very stressed about how to communicate the insights, I go into a meeting and then I mentioned mid-presentation, hey, I think we're having a profit that's 3% down. And then at that point, my manager says, this is bullshit. We're doing this for 25 years. This is the correct way of calculating our profit. And at that point, I was very scared. I thought, okay, what did I have done? What had happened? But luckily, my mentor jumped in and then he managed to save the day, so to say. And then I ended up walking up from the meeting unharmed. But then an interesting lesson happened for me in that day. I realized that in order to communicate data, you need to have an effective story that you put on top of it. Because it's extremely important as analytics expert that once you work on getting the insights, once you prepare your insights, to also have a proper way of communicating your insights and your observations to a wider audience. That's why today I decided to talk about why data storytelling is important, what are the main elements to take into account when talking about data storytelling, and most importantly, how to do it. Usually, when you think about the analytical value path, you start from a data, right? You start from raw data, you put a lot of effort into transforming the data into dashboards, insights, information, but afterwards, those dashboards need to be translated into insights, which then afterwards need to lead to a decision and to an action. And then if you look at it, this would be the natural process in terms of, say, you start from raw data, you build your dashboard, we talk about today about data ingestion, about the data processing, but then the question that comes afterwards is, what you do with it? What is the action that the data helps you move forward with? And then how do you respond to that action? And that's why, if you think of it, for sharing insights, if you're working all alone, like I was doing on my profit analysis and cash flow, you don't need to tell a story because insights is something you can derive by yourself, right? I'm jumping in my Power BI, Tableau, Excel spreadsheet. I'm finding a lot of insights, but then I don't need to communicate this to anyone. But then you have a problem, right? When you want to communicate these insights to other departments, right? You need to seek for approval, you're looking for a budget, you're searching for resources, buy-in for different departments. So then you realize that this becomes very important, the way in which you communicate the insights to other people. So that's why, if you revised a little bit the analytical path of value, you realize that there's a gap between communicating the insights and taking a decision, because the main step in between is the insights component. Then afterwards, you say, okay, let's add the data story. step next to it, because this will enable us to bring people from insights moving to decisions, and this will further enable us to transform these insights into action and into value. So that's also why the reason of me concentrating on this component, which I think is crucial in the autonomy of every organization. Nowadays, a lot of organizations invest very much in BI teams. A lot of organizations say they are data-driven because they invest in data scientists, machine learning models, data analytics team. But then there's a big problem afterwards in terms of what are the decisions that are happening within the organization after we have those insights. So you have on one hand a group of analytical experts, very good at what they are doing, and then you have the rest of the organization. And then the question is, how do you bridge the gap between the two? So that's why we're going to talk about why data storytelling is important, what, and then how to implement it. As a former data scientist, my rationale was always, I have the data, I have the insights, so then it becomes very easy to convince someone that they're right. I see that the sales go up, other sales go down, so problem solved. Sorry to break it, this isn't the case. Stories beat statistics. And then I'll say it one more time. Stories beat statistics. And why is this happening? This is happening for two reasons. One, because stories are more memorable. And I think here an interesting experiment that happened at Stanford University at a communication class. Students were given a bunch of articles which had a lot of insights about statistics, metrics, KPIs. They had 20 minutes to go into it, and afterwards they were asked to present those insights into a wider group. And then at the end of the session, people realized that what the most important element for transforming the insights that you had from the articles into a story for the rest of the people were not actually the statistics, because you realize that people recall more the story that you put next to it. So people don't really recall a 5%, 3% drop in profit, but rather they recall that we have a special campaign that we roll out in a certain time frame, and then that campaign generated the impact. And second reason, this is because stories are more persuasive. Why is this happening? Also a very interesting experiment that happened same at Stanford in the communication class. People were giving $5 for free. And afterwards, they would ask whether they want to donate to charity. And then they split the group into two parts, right? They did an A/B testing. So one group received a storyline in which they say, hey, there's famine in Africa, 35% poverty, 60% of the countries are struggling with less than $1. So the sort of insights and statistics. And the other group received a different story. Hey, this is Rashia from Mali. She's suffering a famine, and she needs some help with his family. And then interesting thing is that more people rather were convinced by the second story because there was a certain emotional element into it. And then on average, they donated $2.3 as opposed to only $1.14 for the story with statistics. And this mainly happens because next to the logic that you would have to a data story, there's a lot of emotion. Because we as humans have a natural tendency to apply emotions next to our logic. And then, okay, now that we understand why data storytelling is important, the next question that we'll tackle is, okay, what it is. And then it's very interesting that the three key elements into performing a data story is data, visuals, and narrative. If you only take, let's say, the first two of it, so you have narrative and visuals, then you would have an engagement component, right? We're consuming stories on Netflix, we're consuming YouTube. Even right now, you're consuming a story. I'm combining some narratives, and I'm combining some visuals that I have on slides. But then if you only combine, for instance, data with narratives, then you would explain, right? You have some Excel spreadsheet, and then you have an explanation on top of it. You go to your manager and say, hey, this is what I found. I think this happened because X, Y, Z, and so on. If you're combining data with visuals, right? Let's say working in Power BI, working in Tableau, you have your data, you build a couple of insights, then you enlighten the audience, right? Hey, this is what I found, this is how it looks like, this is the distribution, these are the pie charts, and then you really go into the enlightenment component. But the true added value comes when you combine the three elements. Because often people think that it's only about data and visuals or only about data and narratives. But a secret ingredient is that you can influence change by combining the three elements regarding data, narratives, and visuals. And then I think from a theoretical standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. Then the next question would be, okay, how do you do this? How do you effectively combine data, narratives, and visuals? So it's very interesting because you would say that from a narrative standpoint, it's very easy, right? You have a beginning, you have a middle, you have an end of story, similar like in Greek tragedies or similar in any novel you read. But then there's an interesting element called the data storytelling arc, meaning that you initially set up the hook, right? You give a little bit of background of, okay, what happened, this is what I noticed, this is what I think it happened, so more on the descriptive component. This is what we know, what we see that happened. Afterwards, in order to keep the audience engaged, you need to go to the second step on rising insights, right? So I found out that X, Y, Z happened, and then we started to dig even more, and then we find more things, and then these are supporting the background, the discussions you're having. But then key is to reach to that aha moment. All this thing happened, and this will generate an impact on our sales, on our profit, on our team profitability. And then what's crucially important afterwards, also connecting to the insights and decisions that I was mentioning in the beginning of the presentation, what do you do next? What are the solutions and what are the next steps that you apply? A lot of times, data and insights team only stop on the first or second point. We found out in the dashboard, we see that things are happening, but then, okay, what's happening? What's next? What are the decisions? What's the insights that would generate the solutions and next steps for your company or for your project? And just to give an example, let's say for setting the hook, let's say you're analyzing your sales, and then you realize that, okay, I see that this quarter the sales are going down. Okay, why is this happening? And then you started to deep dive, right? Let's say you compare the sales with what happened also last year. So if you look at the bar chart, let's say the blue and the orange bar chart represent the sales that happened this year, and the gray one, the one that happened last year. And then you realize, okay, only with the couple of product categories we're having issues. The one with orange, because those are the ones who are lower compared to last year. And then I say, okay, let's further deep dive. Then you start looking into some product categories further, and also looking with some brands. And then you realize that the decrease in sales only happened for a couple of brands. Okay, we're one step further. And then say, okay, if we don't perform any change, or if we don't apply any solutions, we'll have a 38% miss on our targets. And then the next step is, okay, what are the solutions? Together with our business counterpart, we need to answer to the question, what is the best course of action now that we know what happened, we know why it happened, we know what will be the impact. So let's brainstorm together into what to do next. This is why I'll share the 5 steps for better visual storytelling that you can apply on a day-to-day basis, whether you're building dashboards, whether you're having presentation with your manager, even when you're doing a conversation with your partner. First step, very important, identify the right data. Let's do analyzing a bar chart. Quite straightforward, right? You have on the left-hand side the revenue with blue, and then you have customers with gray. You're looking at the bar chart comparison and say, okay, everything is great. The revenue is going up, customers is going up. We're doing an amazing job. But then you realize that if you change a little bit the way in which you look at the chart, meaning you add some calculated metrics, you notice that the speed in which number of customers is increasing is slower than the speed of the revenue you're increasing. So then you realize that you may have a problem, as opposed to the first view when you were comparing and saying that everything goes on the natural path. Even further, if you add some extra contextual information and then you compare the revenue per the customer to last year, then you realize we have an even bigger problem. So you saw how we step by step went from a natural bar chart comparison, for which you would say that you have straightforward insights and information that everything is going on an upward trend, to finding an insight that things are not going as we would expected. Another example, quite standard, right? We're comparing revenue against budget or against targets, and then we have projecting them month by month, and then we're using the comparison via bar chart to see whether we are off or on target. What if we would change the visualization and you only emphasize the attention on what's the variance between the revenue and the budget? In this way, you could quite easily see that on April you have a 60K miss. This becomes even much more clear as opposed to the first visualization. Second element of a better visual storytelling: choose the right visualization. Now, a lot of people go beyond this subject and mentioned, yeah, we have quite standard visualization which we can use everywhere. But then if you try to divide them into several categories, you realize that one way or another, throughout all our dashboards comparison analysis, we're either doing a comparison, we're doing a trend analysis, or composition, relationship on distribution. And then I'll deep dive on each of it. Usually for comparison, you're using a vertical bar chart to display similarities between or differences between product categories. Like for instance, if you're looking at the profit for each product category, then I would say that a vertical bar chart is a good choice for showcasing the differences. Then trend analysis. Line chart is a very good option for showing or plotting the behavior or performance over time. We'll look at sales, or let's say energy consumption, because this is also a hot topic. Then when you want to show parts of a variable, usually a pie chart is a very good option for looking at, for instance, market share of specific products, or let's say if you want to look at shopping preferences among different ages. Next, I think relationship and distribution are less tackled, but equally same important, because usually when you want to look at relationship between variables, right, you want to see what's the correlation between sales and profit. Are they moving in the same direction? Are they moving in a negative direction? A scatter plot would be the ideal visualization to use when looking at this. And then fifth and last one, when you want to look at the distribution, for instance, you want to look at distribution of salaries within your companies, then the best visual of choice would be histogram. Third element, so now you identify the right data, you choose the right visualization to send your message. It's very important to calibrate visuals to your messages. Let's say you have another example, right? Horizontal stacked bar chart is quite a standard chart you would use to show the split between products, and you're looking, for instance, you're looking at sales, and then you're looking at sales per country, and then you decide, okay, I want to see my product manager ask you, okay, I want to see my sales divided by different products, which is a natural first element of choice. But then if you want to benchmark, for instance, how is product B doing in France against Spain, this type of chart is not that straightforward, right? That's why usually panel bar charts that offer a baseline for comparison are much more useful when doing this sort of comparison or when doing a visual inspection. Also, if we deep dive a little bit even more on this, a lot of times, and I saw it in a lot of dashboards, the main elements that you want to take into account when doing the comparison are not put it in the right order. So for instance, in this example, let's say we want to do the segment sales comparison between different products. And then initially, let's say you would say, okay, let's have each segment and then do a deep dive for each product. But then we're doing the comparison, you realize that you need to move from one horizontal bar chart to another, which makes it cumbersome to compare items. That's why it's much more easier to implement a different visualization, which you change the order of the variables you're looking at. Fourth element also happens in a lot of dashboards, is that you have a lot of noise. So it's very hard for the audience to concentrate on the actual insights. It's very hard for your product managers, marketing manager, finance, to look to a dashboard and immediately derive an insights from it. This is because there's a lot of noise next to the dashboard. There's a lot of extra information next to what's equally important. So then the task of investigating and deriving insights from dashboards becomes very difficult. For instance, let's say you want to do the product sales analysis over last year, right? So you're using a lot of line charts, you're looking at the product comparison, you're seeing that product A from product H. But then it's very difficult to see whether there was a certain impact. Whereas, for instance, if you ask yourself what's important, maybe you would concentrate only on the most important elements, just to remove part of the data that's surplus. Even more, a lot of times this happens when you're looking at the pie charts, right? You want to see what's your level of sales among different countries. So then you will say, okay, let's just build a pie chart, and then we let each country be allocated to a specific slice of the pie. But then you realize that if you aggregate things, it also makes it much more easier for the people who are reading the charts and dashboard to realize what's important and what's not important. So aggregate the less critical data to reduce the cognitive load. Also, chart junk. I think you've all seen it. It to all of you happened. You have a beautiful dashboard that was built by the analytics team, by the BI team. Then you make the dashboard available to business, product manager, finance, marketing, you name it. But then it's very hard to concentrate on specific elements, right? If you look on the chart on the left-hand side, you see a lot of products, but then there's a lot of chart junk. You don't actually see the products you are interested in. And by removing the non-essential elements, it makes it very easy for you to communicate much more clearly and to also concentrate on the elements that make a real impact. 5, and last step, focus the audience attention on what's important. And you would ask, okay, why and then how can we do this, for instance, with colors? Why visual designs matter that much? Because, Ryan, if you change colors, you can easily concentrate the audience attention to only one element from the chart. And if you even expand this, then you realize that you can concentrate your audience attention to multiple elements. So this is a great example in terms of how coloring dashboards could help to guide the audience attention. If we extend the example that we previously had on top products, say you only want to concentrate on only one of it. You have multiple product managers, but each product manager is responsible for a specific product. Then, if you only concentrate on the one that's of interest and use coloring and grayscale, it makes it very easy for you to draw the attention and still provide context with the rest of your analysis. And even further, upgrading your visualizations. If you add an extra text element, then you realize that you're slowly moving from a chart that doesn't speak by itself, top products by revenue with a lot of line charts, to a chart which gives us an insight. The revenue grew 95% for products over the past 8 months. And that is an actionable insight that can be used to actually apply afterwards a decision, to actually derive what's a valuable action afterwards. All in all, looking at the gap between what's happening on the data analytics team and what's happening to the rest of the organization, I would conclude that companies need more data storytellers. Because even though numbers have an important story to tell, they rely on you to give them a clear and convincing voice. As human beings, we love stories, but as analytics experts, we love data. So that's why we have a huge responsibility into taking our know-how in terms of analytical numbers and transposing this to the rest of the world. Thank you very much. This was presentation. Looking forward to connect with you.
Thank you, Remus. Any questions? No? Are we all hungry and eager to go to lunch? Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Do you go with dashboards or presentations when storytelling?
Sorry, don't get the question.
So, do you prefer presenting a dashboard, or do you prefer a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation, for example?
I am very output driven. What is the end goal of any presentation dashboard that you're doing? The end goal should be to derive some insights and then to take an action. And I say it again, first derive insights and then take action. A lot of people stop at the first step. So for me, what's important is to all the time have in mind what you're trying to translate to your audience. If your audience is more self-data literate, it means you can independently use a dashboard to self-derive insights, then I would choose a dashboard. But if you know that the data literacy in your company is rather low, you need to help and guide the discussion. As an analytic expert, you have a responsibility to guide the decision-making towards your insights and towards certain actions. So in that part, I would use a presentation. But for me, all the time, it's important to combine those three elements, right? You have the data, you have the visuals, which can happen both in dashboard, both in PowerPoint presentation, Google Slides, Miro, you name it. But then the narrative component is the one that really sits on top of the two and really helps you to share the story with your wider audience. Otherwise, you would end up in the same situation that I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, when I found out about an insight, but I couldn't properly transpose it to the rest of the audience because I didn't have the right tools and the right context set in order to make myself understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was very interesting for me. I think if we start to talk data literacy, maybe we can finally get rid of those Excel reports and reading the data from Excel reports too. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.